You know, there are moments in life when you think you understand your family, when you believe you know exactly where you stand with the people who raised you, and then something happens that shatters that entire perception into a million tiny pieces. That's exactly what happened to me about 3 months ago, and honestly, I'm still processing it all. My name is Sarah. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon, with my wonderful husband, Marcus, and our beautiful baby girl, who just turned 4 months old. But this story, this incredibly painful and complicated story, begins long before my daughter was born, back when I was just 17 years old and thought I had my whole life figured out. When I was in high school, I started dating my older brother's best friend, a guy named Tyler. Looking back now, I can see so many red flags that I completely missed at the time. But when you're 17 and someone who's 19 gives you attention, it feels like the most special thing in the world. Tyler was always around our house, always invited to family dinners, always there at birthdays and holidays and summer barbecues. My brother Jason, who's 4 years older than me, thought it was great that his little sister was dating his best friend. My older sister Rebecca, who's 36 now, was absolutely convinced that Tyler and I were soulmates destined to be together forever. She used to tell me constantly that I had found my person, that I should hold on tight, that girls like me didn't always get so lucky to find the perfect man so young. We dated all through my senior year of high school, and everything felt like it was moving at this predetermined pace that everyone around me had already decided on. My parents seemed pleased, my siblings were thrilled, and Tyler's family treated me like I was already part of their clan. Then graduation came, and Tyler proposed to me at my graduation party in front of everyone. I can still remember the feeling of panic that washed over me when he got down on one knee in my parents' backyard with all our friends and family watching. Everyone was cheering and crying happy tears, and I just felt this overwhelming sense of being trapped. I was 18 years old, I had just gotten accepted to a university across the country, and suddenly everyone expected me to say yes to spending the rest of my life with someone I had only dated for a year and a half. I said no. I actually said no in front of everyone, and the silence that followed was deafening. Tyler's face went from hopeful and excited to completely devastated in a matter of seconds. People started whispering. My sister Rebecca looked absolutely furious, and my mum's face showed pure disappointment. I tried to explain that I was too young, that I wanted to go to college, that I wasn't ready for marriage, but nobody wanted to hear it. The party basically ended right there, with people awkwardly shuffling out, and Tyler leaving with his parents while my family stayed behind to tell me what a terrible mistake I had just made. The months that followed were some of the hardest of my life. My mum kept pulling me aside to ask if I would reconsider, suggesting that Tyler and I could have a long engagement, that we didn't have to get married right away, but at least I could show my commitment to him. My sister Rebecca was relentless, constantly bringing up how perfect Tyler was, how I would never find anyone better, how I was throwing away my one chance at happiness. Even my dad, who I thought would understand, seemed disappointed in my choice. Only Jason seemed conflicted. He would defend me sometimes, but then also try to convince me that Tyler was a good guy, and maybe I should give it another shot. I went off to college anyway, determined to live my own life and make my own choices. But even hundreds of miles away, I couldn't escape the pressure. Tyler was still invited to every single family gathering. My sister made sure he was at Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, 4th of July, literally every occasion you can imagine. She would send me photos of him with the family, tell me how much everyone missed seeing us together, how sad Tyler looked without me. It was constant emotional manipulation, but at the time I tried to be understanding because Tyler had been Jason's best friend since they were kids, and I didn't want to be the reason they couldn't hang out anymore. Things got even worse when Rebecca started actively trying to set Tyler and me up on what she called blind dates, even though we both knew exactly who we were meeting. She would tell me she needed help with something, and then conveniently Tyler would show up. She would plan family dinners and seat us next to each other. One Christmas, she actually gave us a couple's massage gift certificate and tried to pressure us into using it together. I kept brushing it off, trying to maintain peace, but it was exhausting. The breaking point came when she started insisting that Tyler and I share a bedroom during family vacations. She would book hotel rooms or rent vacation houses and just casually announce that there weren't enough rooms, so Tyler and I would have to share. Never mind that I was an adult who hadn't been in a relationship with this man for years. Never mind that I had explicitly asked her to stop. She just kept pushing and pushing. Finally, I went to my parents and begged them to intervene. I explained that I felt uncomfortable, that Rebecca's behavior was inappropriate, and that if it didn't stop, I was going to have to distance myself from the family. My dad and mom sat down with both Jason and Rebecca and made it clear that Tyler could no longer be invited to every family event, that he wasn't part of the family, and that they needed to respect my boundaries. Jason actually listened and backed off. Our relationship was a little strained for a while, but he apologized and we worked through it. Rebecca, on the other hand, acted like I had personally attacked her. She said I was being dramatic, that I was ruining family traditions, that I clearly still had feelings for Tyler and was just in denial about it. Then I met Marcus. It was during a study abroad program in London during my junior year of college. He was from Boston, attending a different university, but we ended up in the same program. From the very first conversation, I knew there was something different about him. He was kind and funny and intelligent, and he treated me like an equal partner, not like some prize to be won or some project to be managed. We spent every free moment together that semester, exploring the city, staying up late talking about our dreams and fears, falling deeply and completely in love in a way I had never experienced before. When the program ended and we had to go back to our respective universities, we stayed together, calling and texting constantly, visiting each other whenever we could, making it work because we both knew we had found something special. After dating for 14 months, Marcus proposed to me during a weekend trip to Cape Cod. It was private, just the two of us on the beach at sunset, and when he asked me to marry him, I said yes, without a single moment of hesitation. I was 23 years old and absolutely certain that I wanted to spend my life with this man. When I called my family to tell them the news, everyone was excited and happy except Rebecca. She immediately started with the comments about how I was in the honeymoon phase, how I barely knew Marcus, how Tyler had known me so much longer and understood me better, how I was making a huge mistake. I tried to ignore her, tried to focus on planning my wedding and building my future with Marcus, but she wouldn't let it go. The fights between Rebecca and me became more and more intense. She would bring up Tyler constantly, compare Marcus to him, tell me I was settling. She even called Marcus once to tell him that I had been in love with Tyler first and he would never measure up. Marcus handled it with grace, but I was furious. I told her that if she pulled anything else, if she continued to disrespect my relationship and my choices, I would cut her out of my life completely. I meant it as a warning, a final chance for her to back off and let me be happy. She promised she would behave, said she just wanted what was best for me, and I stupidly believed her. Then came her wedding. Rebecca got married about 6 months before Marcus and I were planning to get married, and she asked me to be in her bridal party. I was hesitant given everything that had happened, but my mum convinced me that it would be good for our relationship, that maybe this would be a turning point. So I agreed. The first red flag should have been when Rebecca insisted on having a huge bridal party with very specific couple pairings. She matched up all the bridesmaids and groomsmen, and I discovered at the rehearsal dinner that my assigned partner was Tyler. I confronted her about it, and she acted like it was no big deal, said she thought we could be mature adults about it, and that Tyler was one of her husband's groomsmen, so it just made sense. But it didn't end there. During the entire wedding weekend, Rebecca tried to force Tyler and me together at every opportunity. She seated us together at every meal, assigned us to the same hotel shuttle, made us walk down the aisle together during the ceremony, I was so uncomfortable, and Marcus could see it, but tried to be supportive and not cause drama at someone else's wedding. The absolute worst part came at the reception. I was sitting with Marcus at our assigned table when I realized that there was a woman sitting extremely close to him, practically draped over him, trying to flirt and get his attention. When I asked Marcus what was going on, he told me that this woman had been introduced to him as his date for the evening, that apparently Rebecca had assigned dates to everyone, and this woman thought she was supposed to be with Marcus. I completely lost it. I went straight to Rebecca and demanded to know what she was thinking. She had the audacity to smile at me and say that since Marcus and I weren't married yet, we should both feel free to explore connections with other people, that you never know who you might meet at a wedding, that maybe the universe was trying to tell us something. That was it. That was the moment I knew I could never have a relationship with my sister again. I grabbed Marcus and we left the reception immediately. The next morning, I sat down with my parents and Jason and told them that I was done with Rebecca, that I would not be speaking to her again, that I wouldn't make them choose between us, but I needed them to respect my decision and not try to fix things or force us back together. My mum was devastated. She cried and tried to negotiate, suggested family therapy, begged me to reconsider. But my dad and Jason both said they understood and would respect my choice. They didn't have to cut Rebecca off themselves, but they promised not to pressure me to reconcile. My mum made 2 attempts over the following weeks to get me to talk to Rebecca, but when I remained firm, she finally backed off. For the next 7 years, I had 0 contact with Rebecca. If we were at the same family event, I acted like she didn't exist. I didn't speak to her, didn't acknowledge her, didn't respond when she tried to talk to me. At first, she would make passive-aggressive comments or try to create drama, but when nobody in the family supported her behavior, she eventually gave up. Marcus and I got married in a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by the people who truly loved and supported us. Rebecca was invited to attend as a guest, but was not part of the wedding party. She showed up, sat in the back, and left early. My dad walked me down the aisle, my mum cried happy tears, Jason gave a heartfelt best man speech, and it was one of the happiest days of my life. Marcus and I built a wonderful life together in Portland. He got a great job at a tech company. I worked as a graphic designer, we bought a house, we travelled, we made plans for our future. After being married for 5 years, we decided we were ready to start a family. When I found out I was pregnant, we were both over the moon. We told our families right away, and everyone was so excited. My dad started buying baby clothes immediately. Jason and his wife offered to babysit any time we needed. Marcus's parents were already planning visits to meet their grandchild. Even my mum seemed genuinely happy, calling to check on me, asking about how I was feeling, offering to help with anything I needed. The pregnancy was going well, I was healthy, the baby was healthy, and everything felt perfect. I should have known it was too good to last. About 2 months before my due date, my mum called and asked if I would come over for lunch. She said she wanted to talk about baby stuff, show me some things she had bought for the nursery at her house, just spend some quality time together. Something about the invitation felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on why. I mentioned it to Marcus, and he asked if I wanted him to come with me, but I told him I would be fine, that it was just lunch with my mum. That was one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made. When I arrived at my parents' house that Saturday afternoon, I immediately knew something was wrong. I walked in through the front door, and there, sitting in my parents' living room, were not just my mum, but also Rebecca, who I hadn't spoken to in 7 years, and Tyler, my ex-boyfriend from high school, who I hadn't seen in probably 5 years. My stomach dropped. I turned around to leave, but Rebecca's husband Brad was standing behind me blocking the doorway. He put his hand on my shoulder and told me in this really threatening tone that I should sit down for my own good, that we all needed to have a family conversation. I was trapped, I was heavily pregnant, I was alone, and I was surrounded by people who clearly had planned this ambush without my knowledge. My mum gestured for me to sit on the couch, and I did, mostly because I was in shock and didn't know what else to do. Nobody spoke for what felt like forever, and then Rebecca cleared her throat and started talking. What came out of her mouth was so absurd, so completely disconnected from reality, that I actually started laughing. I couldn't help it. The whole situation was so ridiculous that my brain couldn't process it as real. Rebecca told me that when they heard I was pregnant, they all got together and decided that I was making a terrible mistake by having a baby with Marcus. She said that they had thought long and hard about it, and they had come to the conclusion that Tyler was the right man for me, that he should be the father of my children, that Marcus was a mistake I had made, and now was the time to correct it. But it got worse. Rebecca actually said that once my baby was born, Marcus should sign over his parental rights to Tyler so that Tyler could raise the baby as his own. She said it with complete seriousness, like this was a reasonable and normal thing to suggest. I tried to stand up, tried to leave, but Brad moved closer to the door and Rebecca kept talking. She pulled out a letter, multiple pages long, that she had written about why Tyler was my soulmate, and how I had torn our family apart by refusing to marry him all those years ago. She started reading it out loud, talking about how Tyler had waited for me, how he had never stopped loving me, how everyone in the family knew we were meant to be together. She talked about how Marcus had manipulated me, how he had taken advantage of me when I was young and naive in college, how he was controlling and keeping me away from my real family. None of it was true, not a single word. Marcus is the kindest, most supportive partner I could ever ask for. He has never been anything but respectful of my family, even when they didn't deserve it. I was sitting there, pregnant and terrified, listening to my sister read this insane manifesto about how I needed to leave my husband for my high school ex-boyfriend. And I just kept thinking about how I needed to get out of there. I was looking at my mum, waiting for her to say something, to tell Rebecca this was crazy, to help me leave. But my mum just sat there nodding along like everything Rebecca was saying made perfect sense. Tyler was sitting on the other side of the room, looking smug and confident, like he genuinely believed this plan was going to work. It was a nightmare. Then I heard my phone buzzing in my purse. I managed to grab it and see that Jason was calling me. I answered, and before I could say anything, he asked me where I was. I told him I was at Mom and Dad's house, and he said he was on his way, that Dad had just called him and told him what was happening, that he was furious. Apparently, my dad had no idea about this lunch, about this intervention, about any of it. He had been out running errands when my mum set this whole thing up, and when he came home and saw what was happening, he immediately called Jason for backup. Jason arrived about 3 minutes later with his wife Kelly, and the look on his face when he walked in was pure rage. He looked at Rebecca and told her he was ashamed to be her brother, looked at my mum and said he couldn't believe she would do this to me, and then he came straight to me, helped me up, grabbed my purse and my jacket, and told everyone he was taking me home. Brad tried to block us again, but Jason is a pretty big guy, and he just pushed past him. We got outside, and I completely broke down. I was sobbing, shaking, feeling like my entire world had just been turned upside down. Jason put me in his car and just held me while I cried, telling me over and over that he was sorry, that he had no idea this was going to happen, that he should have protected me better. Kelly called Marcus and my dad, and they both showed up within 20 minutes. Marcus was frantic, asking if the baby and I were okay, checking me over to make sure nobody had hurt me. My dad came out of the house looking devastated, apologizing profusely, saying he had told Mom and Rebecca in no uncertain terms that what they did was unforgivable. We all sat in Jason's car for a while, trying to figure out what to do next. I was still crying, Marcus was holding me, and I just felt so betrayed and so hurt that I couldn't even think straight. When I finally calmed down enough to speak, I told them I wanted to go home. Marcus drove me back to our house, and Jason and Kelly followed in their car. My dad stayed behind to deal with my mom and Rebecca, though I don't know what he said to them. Once we got home, I just went straight to bed. I was exhausted emotionally and physically, and I was worried about the stress affecting the baby. Marcus stayed with me, and Jason and Kelly stayed at our house too, just to make sure we were okay. That night, lying in bed, Marcus and I talked about what we were going to do. We both knew we couldn't just let this go, that this was too serious and too dangerous to ignore. The next day, after talking to Marcus and Jason, I sent emails to everyone who had been part of that intervention: my mum, Rebecca, Tyler, and Brad. I attached my lawyer's contact information and wrote that I did not want any of them to ever contact me again, that if they attempted to reach out to me in any way, I would consider it harassment and go to the police. I told them they were no longer welcome in my life or my child's life, and that any future communication needed to go through my attorney. It felt harsh, but I didn't see any other option. These people had ambushed me while I was pregnant, tried to convince me to leave my husband and give my baby to someone else, and clearly thought their behavior was acceptable. The response from my family was predictably dramatic. According to my dad, who I was still in contact with because he had clearly been against the whole thing, my mum and Rebecca were hysterical. They were calling him constantly, crying and saying they just wanted what was best for me, that they didn't understand why I was being so dramatic. Rebecca apparently told my dad that she just wanted to be part of my baby's life, that maybe she could even be the godmother. The level of delusion was astounding. She had literally tried to break up my marriage and steal my child for my ex-boyfriend, and now she wanted to be the godmother. My dad told them both that he supported my decision completely and that they had brought this on themselves. But it didn't end there. Within a few days, I started getting phone calls from extended family members and mutual friends, people I hadn't talked to in months or even years, all asking me what happened with Rebecca. Apparently, she had gone on social media and started posting about how my husband was controlling and abusive, how he was keeping me away from my family, how she was so worried about my safety and the safety of my unborn child. She painted herself as this concerned sister who just wanted to help, and she was getting sympathy from people who didn't know the full story. People were calling me to ask if I was okay, if I needed help getting away from Marcus, if there was anything they could do. It was infuriating. After talking with Marcus and our lawyer, I decided to post my own statement on social media. I hate airing personal issues publicly, but Rebecca had already made this public, and I needed people to know the truth. I wrote a detailed account of what had happened, explaining about the years of Rebecca trying to push Tyler on me, her behavior at her own wedding, and finally the intervention where they tried to get me to leave my husband and give my baby to my ex-boyfriend. I named everyone involved: Rebecca, Tyler, Brad, and even my mum. The post went viral within our community. People were shocked and disgusted. Rebecca, Tyler, and Brad were getting absolutely dragged in the comments. And while part of me felt bad about it, mostly I just felt relieved that people finally knew the truth. Now, let me back up and give you a bit more context about the history with Tyler, because I think it's important to understand just how deep this obsession went. When Tyler and I were dating in high school, I thought it was a normal teenage relationship. We went to movies, he drove me to school, we hung out with friends. It all seemed pretty standard. But looking back now with adult eyes, I can see that Tyler was always a bit too possessive, too controlling, too invested in planning out our entire future without really asking what I wanted. He would talk about where we would live after we got married, how many kids we would have, what kind of house we would buy, all when I was 17 years old and just trying to figure out what I wanted to study in college. When I broke off the engagement and went to college, Tyler didn't take it well. He would call me constantly, show up at my dorm unannounced, send me long letters about how we were meant to be together. At one point, I had to ask the college to help me because he was making me uncomfortable. Eventually, he seemed to back off, but as I mentioned, he stayed super close with Jason and ingrained himself in my family. Every time I came home for holidays, there he was. Every family photo from those years has Tyler in it, standing there with my siblings like he belonged, looking at me with this intensity that made me uncomfortable. Then, when Rebecca got so obsessed with getting us back together, Tyler seemed to think he still had a chance. He would try to talk to me at these forced encounters Rebecca set up, telling me he knew I still had feelings for him, that I was just scared of commitment, that Marcus was a rebound. When Marcus and I got engaged, Tyler actually called me and told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. I blocked his number after that, but he would still be at family events, still be in my space, still be part of my family in a way that felt completely wrong. So for Tyler to be part of this intervention, to be sitting there expecting me to just abandon my marriage and my life to be with him, it wasn't really a surprise. He had never actually accepted that I didn't want him, that I had moved on, that I was happy with someone else. And my sister had spent years feeding into his delusion, encouraging him, telling him that I was just confused and would come back to him eventually. They had built this fantasy together, and my mum had apparently bought into it too. After the public post, after the emails to my lawyer, we all hoped that would be the end of it. But of course it wasn't. A few days later, I got a call from Jason telling me that my mum had hired her own lawyer and was now claiming she was going to sue for grandparents' rights or even try to get custody of my baby. She was telling people that I was mentally unstable, that Marcus was dangerous, that the baby would be in danger if left in our care. It was absolutely insane. We immediately contacted our lawyer, who sent her a cease and desist letter explaining that her behavior had directly caused harm to my health and the baby's health, and that if she continued to harass me, we would pursue legal action against her. Around this same time, my dad made the decision to move out of the house. He told my mum that he could not stay married to someone who would terrorize their own child, who would participate in such a cruel and manipulative scheme. He said he was filing for divorce and that he wanted nothing more to do with her unless she got serious psychiatric help. My dad moved in with Jason for a little while, just until he could figure out his next steps. Jason and Kelly were supportive, but it was a hard adjustment for everyone. Marcus was heartbroken too. He had always tried so hard to get along with my family, to be respectful and kind, even when they weren't particularly welcoming. He had never said a bad word about them, always encouraged me to maintain relationships with my parents and siblings. To find out that they had been plotting behind his back, that they saw him as some kind of obstacle to be removed, it really hurt him. He told me that he would never allow my mum or Rebecca to have any relationship with our child, that he couldn't trust them not to try to poison our daughter against us or continue their campaign to break up our marriage. I agreed completely. The stress of everything started to affect my health. My blood pressure was elevated at my next doctor's appointment, and my OB/GYN told me that I needed to find ways to reduce stress, or it could be dangerous for both me and the baby. Marcus went into full protective mode. He set up security cameras around our house, changed all our passwords, made sure everyone at our jobs knew not to let my mum or Rebecca into our buildings. We blocked them on all social media, blocked their phone numbers, even got a PO box for our mail just in case they tried to send something to our home address. It felt extreme, but we didn't know what else to do. About 2 weeks after the intervention disaster, I was coming home from running some errands. I had stopped at the grocery store and the post office, just normal Saturday afternoon stuff. When I pulled up to our house, I saw my mum's car parked in the driveway. My heart started racing. I didn't go inside. I just sat in my car and immediately called Marcus. He was at the gym and said he would be home in 10 minutes, but in the meantime I should call Jason. So I did, and Jason's wife Kelly happened to be closer than anyone else. She was actually just a few blocks away and rushed over. Kelly pulled up just as my mum and Rebecca were coming out of my house. Apparently, our cleaning lady, who had been helping us for years and knew my mum, had let them in. I had completely forgotten to tell her that my mum was not allowed in the house anymore. The cleaning lady felt terrible about it later, but in that moment, I was just terrified. Kelly got out of her car and marched right up to my mum and Rebecca. I couldn't hear exactly what she said, but I could see her gesturing firmly, clearly telling them they needed to leave. My mum was crying and trying to explain something, but Kelly wasn't having it. She told them that if they didn't leave immediately, she would call the police and have them arrested for trespassing. They eventually got in the car and left, but the damage was done. I was so upset, so stressed, that I started having chest pains and trouble breathing. Kelly took me straight to the emergency room. The doctors checked me out, monitored the baby, and told me that while we were both okay, the level of stress I was under was not sustainable. They said I needed to find ways to completely eliminate the sources of stress from my life, or I could end up with serious complications. That was the wake-up call we needed. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or family drama anymore. This was about my health and my baby's health and our safety. Marcus called my dad and Jason, and they all went to my parents' house together, along with Kelly's brother, who happens to be built like a linebacker. They went inside, and my dad packed up everything he could fit in his car. He took all his clothes, important documents, sentimental items, anything he cared about. Marcus said that Rebecca was there, and she was screaming at them, saying that they were destroying her family, that Marcus had poisoned everyone against her, that this was all his fault. My dad apparently looked her straight in the eye and told her that she and my mum had almost killed their grandchild, that he didn't want to speak to either of them ever again, and that she should really think about getting professional help before she ruined the rest of her life. After that, we made some serious changes. My lawyer sent official letters to both my mum and Rebecca stating that any further contact would result in legal action. We filed a police report documenting the harassment and trespassing so there would be an official record. We changed our phone numbers and only gave the new numbers to people we absolutely trusted. We even talked about moving, though we ultimately decided to stay in our home since we loved it and didn't want to be driven out by their behavior. But we did upgrade our security system and made sure we had cameras recording everything just in case. My mum and Rebecca refused to get therapy or acknowledge that they had done anything wrong. They were telling anyone who would listen that they were the victims, that we were overreacting, that they had only wanted to help me see the truth about my marriage. My dad tried to talk to them rationally, but it was impossible. They were so convinced they were right that no amount of evidence or explanation could change their minds. It was like they were living in an alternate reality where their behavior made perfect sense. The months leading up to my due date were a mix of joy and anxiety. Marcus and I went to birthing classes together, set up the nursery, read every baby book we could find. My dad was incredibly involved and excited, buying us baby supplies, offering to help however he could, just being the supportive parent I needed. Jason and Kelly were amazing too, throwing us a baby shower, checking in on us constantly, making sure we knew we had family who loved us. Marcus's parents flew in from Boston for a visit, and it was so nice to be around people who were just purely happy about the baby without any drama or ulterior motives. But there was always this underlying worry about what my mum and Rebecca might do when the baby was actually born. We knew they would try to find out when I went into labour, would try to show up at the hospital, would do anything they could to insert themselves into the situation. So we came up with a plan. We didn't tell anyone outside our immediate circle my actual due date. We gave people a date that was 2 weeks later than the real one. And when it came time for delivery, we only told the absolute bare minimum number of people. Even then, we were paranoid. We had discovered that a couple of extended family members who we thought we could trust had been passing information to my mom. So Marcus came up with this clever but kind of sad test. He would tell different people slightly different information about when I was going into labour, like tell one person Tuesday morning, another person Tuesday afternoon, someone else Wednesday, and so on. Then we waited to see if my mum showed up, and if she did, we would know who had leaked the information. It felt horrible to have to trick people like that, to not be able to trust our own family, but we needed to protect ourselves. My daughter was born on a beautiful Thursday morning in late May. The delivery went smoothly, she was healthy and perfect, and Marcus cried when he held her for the first time. We named her Lily, and she had these big, curious eyes and the tiniest fingers I had ever seen. We stayed in the hospital for 2 days, and the only people who visited were my dad, Jason and his family, and Marcus's parents. It was peaceful and perfect. exactly what we had wanted. No drama, no unexpected visitors, just love and support from the people who truly cared about us. But of course, the peace didn't last. Within a week of coming home with Lily, we found out that Tyler had been going around telling people that the baby was his, that Marcus was not actually the father, that we had been having a secret affair because I had never gotten over him and still loved him. He was saying that I was just with Marcus for financial security, but that Lily was Tyler's child from our supposed affair. It was completely insane and completely untrue, but he was out there spreading this rumor to anyone who would listen. Marcus was furious. He contacted Tyler's employer with documentation of everything that had happened, the intervention, the harassment, the lies, all of it. Tyler worked in a field that dealt with vulnerable people, and his employer took the allegations very seriously. They put him on immediate suspension pending an internal investigation. They asked us for more and more details, more documentation, more evidence of his behavior. We provided everything we had, and from what we understand, Tyler was eventually fired. His professional reputation was completely destroyed, and honestly, we didn't feel bad about it at all. He had tried to ruin our family, had harassed us for years, had been part of an intervention to break up our marriage, and now he was spreading lies about our child. He brought it all on himself. My mum, meanwhile, had apparently been trying to track us down. She didn't know exactly where we lived, since we had moved shortly before Lily was born, and we had been very careful about not posting any identifying information on social media. The few people who knew our new address had been sworn to secrecy and understood the seriousness of the situation. My mum tried to get information from mutual friends, from distant relatives, from anyone she could think of, but everyone stayed loyal to us. My dad's lawyer even sent her an official letter stating that due to her instability and her harassment, all future contact needed to go through legal channels, and she was not to attempt to find or contact us directly. Living with a newborn is exhausting under the best circumstances, and we definitely didn't have the best circumstances. But in a way, all the drama with my mum and Rebecca and Tyler actually brought the rest of us closer together. My dad ended up moving into a small apartment near us, and he became the most hands-on grandfather you could imagine. He would come over almost every day to help with Lily, to bring us meals, to just be there for support. Marcus's mum would video chat with us multiple times a week to see Lily, and when she came to visit, she would stay in our guest room and help with nighttime feedings so we could sleep. Jason and Kelly brought their 2 kids over regularly so Lily could be around her cousins. We had created this chosen family of people who truly loved and supported us, and it was beautiful. My dad confided in me one day that he felt incredibly guilty about everything that had happened. He said he should have seen the signs earlier, should have protected me better, should have put his foot down with my mum years ago when she and Rebecca first started pushing Tyler on me. I told him that none of this was his fault, that my mum and Rebecca were adults who made their own choices, but I could tell he was really struggling with it. He and my mum were in the process of divorcing, and it was messy. She was fighting for the house, for alimony, for anything she could get. My dad's lawyer told him that given her behavior and the documentation we had of her harassment and threats, he would likely get a favorable settlement, but it was still painful to go through. One of the stranger developments came a few months after Lily was born. My dad started spending time with Maria, our former cleaning lady's sister. Maria owned a nail salon in town, and she and my dad had met a few times when he was helping us move or setting up our new place. They started talking, then getting coffee, then dating. She was a really warm and kind woman with adult children of her own, so she understood complicated family dynamics. My dad told us early on that he had no interest in getting married again or even moving in with anyone, that he valued his independence too much. Maria felt the same way. They both just wanted companionship and someone to spend time with without all the pressure and expectations of a traditional relationship. When my mum found out that my dad was dating someone, she apparently had a complete meltdown. She was telling anyone who would listen that he was having a midlife crisis, that he was being taken advantage of, that Maria was just after his money. Never mind that Maria owned her own successful business and didn't need my dad's money. Never mind that my dad was happier than we had seen him in years. My mum just couldn't stand that he had moved on, that he wasn't sitting at home pining for her and regretting the divorce. She tried to contact him multiple times to tell him he was making a mistake, but his lawyer had advised him to only communicate through legal channels, so he never responded. Meanwhile, Rebecca was having her own problems. My dad had been secretly paying for her son's private school tuition and some of his childcare costs. He did it because he loved his grandson and didn't want the kid to suffer because of his mother's bad choices. But after everything that happened, after Rebecca participated in the intervention and refused to apologize or get help, my dad decided he couldn't keep supporting her financially. He told her that until she showed real change and genuine remorse, he was cutting her off. Rebecca panicked. She and her husband Brad had been relying on that money, and without it, they couldn't afford the expensive private school or the premium childcare they had been using. What happened next was really sad. Rebecca's son, who was 8 years old at the time, started saying some really concerning things to his cousins. Jason's kids came home one day and told their parents that their cousin had been calling Lily an affair baby, saying that Marcus wasn't really her dad, insisting that only he was the real cousin, and Jason's kids were being delusional if they thought they were related to Lily. At a birthday party for one of Jason's kids, Rebecca's son actually pushed one of his cousins into Marcus and said they weren't real family, that only he was the real grandchild. The kids were so confused and hurt by this behavior. They had always gotten along before, and now their cousin was suddenly being mean and saying weird things. My dad tried to talk to the boy, to explain that what he was saying wasn't true and wasn't kind, but the kid just repeated it. He said his mum told him it was true, that Lily wasn't really part of the family, that Marcus was bad. My dad was horrified. He confronted Rebecca, and she basically said that she couldn't help what her son believed, that kids always tell the truth, and maybe there was something to what he was saying. That was the final straw for my dad. He told Rebecca that until she got her act together and stopped poisoning her own child's mind with lies, he would no longer be paying for anything, and he would no longer be facilitating visits with his grandson. He said he loved the boy but couldn't watch him being turned into a weapon against the rest of the family. Rebecca completely fell apart. She called everyone in the family crying, saying that Marcus had forced my dad to cut them off, that we were destroying her family, that her son was being punished for telling the truth. Nobody believed her. Everyone had seen the pattern of behavior, the years of manipulation and obsession, and they knew exactly who was responsible for the situation. Jason and Kelly made the difficult decision to also limit contact with Rebecca and her son. They sat their own kids down and explained in age-appropriate terms that Grandma and Aunt Rebecca were not well right now and needed to get help, that they wouldn't be seeing them for a while, but that it didn't mean they weren't loved. Jason told me later that it was one of the hardest conversations he's ever had with his kids. They didn't really understand why Grandma and Aunt Rebecca were being mean about baby Lily and Uncle Marcus. They wanted to know what they had done wrong. Jason and Kelly had to explain that they hadn't done anything wrong, that sometimes adults make bad choices and it affects everyone around them. The kids were sad about losing time with their grandmother, but they were also old enough to recognize that something wasn't right about the way Rebecca's son had been acting and the things he had been saying. As the months went by and Lily got bigger, we settled into a new normal. It was a normal without my mum and Rebecca, which felt strange and sad sometimes, but it was also peaceful. We didn't have to worry about sneak attacks or interventions or lies being spread about us. We could just focus on being parents and enjoying our daughter. My dad was there for every milestone, the first smile, the first laugh, the first time she rolled over, all of it. He was the grandfather Lily deserved, present and loving and supportive, without any agenda or manipulation. Marcus's parents visited several times throughout the year, and Lily grew to recognize them and light up when she saw them on video calls. Jason's family integrated Lily into their world completely. His kids adored their baby cousin and were so gentle and sweet with her. They would ask to hold her and help feed her, and they took their roles as big cousins very seriously. Kelly would bring over meals for us, help with laundry, just do the little things that make such a huge difference when you're exhausted new parents. We had date nights where Jason and Kelly would babysit, and they had date nights where we would watch their kids. It was the kind of family dynamic I had always wanted, where everyone supports each other and shows up and actually cares. Marcus's sister Rachel also became a huge part of our support system. She didn't live nearby, but she would come visit every few months and stay with us for a week or two at a time. She had older kids and was so knowledgeable about baby stuff, always ready with advice or reassurance when we weren't sure if something was normal. She was also really respectful of our parenting choices and our space, always asking if it was okay to visit and making sure she wasn't overstaying her welcome. Eventually, we started letting her take Lily for overnight visits at her hotel, and she was so honored and excited about it. She would take a million photos and send them to us, and Lily clearly loved spending time with her aunt. My mum tried a few more times to get in contact with us. She sent letters to my dad's apartment, but he just forwarded them to our lawyer without opening them. She made social media accounts under fake names to try to see pictures of Lily, but we had our accounts locked down and she couldn't get access. She even tried showing up at Jason's house once, but Kelly saw her car pull up and just didn't answer the door. After about 20 minutes of knocking and calling, my mum eventually left. Jason sent her an email afterward reiterating that she was not welcome and that any further attempts to contact the family would be considered harassment. There was one particularly low point when my mum and Rebecca made an Instagram account dedicated to how they were victims of parental alienation. They posted these dramatic videos talking about how their family had abandoned them, how my dad was cruel for choosing me over my mum, how Rebecca was a saint for standing by my mum through all of this. It was gross and manipulative, and we were all angry about it, but our lawyer advised us to not engage, to just document everything and send it to him. Eventually, the account was reported enough times that it got taken down, but not before a few people we knew saw it and reached out to ask what was going on. Father's Day, that first year after everything happened, was really emotional for all of us. Marcus became a dad for the first time and was navigating that whole identity shift. My dad was dealing with the fact that he had lost relationships with his wife and one of his daughters, but had gained this precious time with his granddaughter. Jason was watching his kids grow up and trying to help them understand the complicated family situation. We decided to do something special and fun to celebrate all the dads in our life. We took everyone, including the kids, to this nice resort hotel about an hour away that had a pool and a game room, and we just had a weekend of family bonding. The kids thought it was hilarious that we set up a tent in the middle of the hotel suite and let them camp indoors. Marcus's dad joined us via video call for part of it, and he was so touched that we included him even though he couldn't be there in person. We played games, went swimming, had fancy room service, and just enjoyed being together without any stress or drama. It was exactly what we all needed. My dad got a little emotional at dinner and thanked Marcus for being such a good husband and father, said he was proud to have him as a son-in-law. Marcus thanked my dad for supporting us and being there for Lily. It was beautiful and healing and everything a family celebration should be. Of course, Rebecca couldn't let Father's Day pass without trying to make it about herself. She posted several things on social media about how her dad had abandoned her, how he chose a manipulative daughter-in-law over his own child, how she was grieving the loss of her father even though he was still alive. It was so dramatic and so untrue. My dad hadn't abandoned her. He had set boundaries after she participated in a cruel and harmful intervention, and he had told her exactly what she would need to do to repair their relationship. She just refused to do any of it. She wouldn't go to therapy, wouldn't apologize, wouldn't acknowledge that her behavior was wrong. And now she was playing the victim on social media to get sympathy. My dad's friends and family members who saw her posts were mostly confused because they knew the truth about what had happened. A few people reached out to my dad to ask if he was okay and if there was anything they could do to support him. He appreciated the concern but told everyone that he was fine, that he had made the right choice, and that he wasn't going to engage with Rebecca's attempts to manipulate him through social media. He did block her on everything, though, because even though his lawyer had previously advised him not to block my mum for documentation purposes, the lawyer said it was fine to block Rebecca since she wasn't actively harassing him the way my mum was. As fall approached and Lily was getting close to 6 months old, we started having conversations about whether we wanted to have another baby. On one hand, we loved being parents and wanted Lily to have a sibling. On the other hand, we were exhausted and still dealing with the aftermath of all the family drama. Marcus and I talked about it a lot, weighed the pros and cons, considered our finances and our support system and our mental health. We ultimately decided that we would start trying again, but not put too much pressure on it. If it happened quickly, great. If it took a while, that was fine too. We just wanted to be open to expanding our family when the time was right. We also talked seriously about adoption. Marcus had always been open to it, and I had grown interested in the idea, especially after seeing how much love our chosen family had shown us. We thought maybe we could provide that same love and stability to a child who needed it. We started doing research into the adoption process, what it would entail, how long it might take, what kind of support was available. We weren't ready to officially start anything yet, since we wanted to see if we would get pregnant naturally first, but it was comforting to know we had options and that we were both on the same page about wanting more children. Around this time, we got some news about Tyler that honestly made us all feel a bit satisfied, even though maybe it shouldn't have. Apparently, Tyler had been essentially blacklisted in his industry. Word had spread about why he was fired, about the stalking and harassment and lies, and other organizations didn't want to take the risk of hiring him. He had been applying for jobs for months with no success. His professional reputation was completely destroyed, and he was having trouble finding any work in his field. From what we heard through the grapevine, he had moved back in with his mum because he couldn't afford his apartment anymore. The same grapevine also told us that Tyler's ex-girlfriend, the mother of his children, had moved away and taken the kids with her. Apparently, Tyler barely even reacted. He told people it was probably for the best, that he had too much going on to deal with custody arrangements anyway. This from a man who claimed to be so desperate to be a father figure that he tried to get me to give him my baby. He didn't actually care about being a father. He didn't care about his own children. He just wanted to possess me, to have control, to win some imaginary competition against Marcus. It was sick, and it made me so grateful that I had trusted my instincts all those years ago when I said no to his proposal. We also found out that my dad's divorce from my mum was finally finalized. It had taken almost a year because my mum fought everything, argued every point, tried to get more money and more assets and more of everything. But in the end, the judge saw through her tactics. She got the house and a reasonable settlement, but that was it. My dad got to keep most of his retirement savings, his car, his personal belongings, and his dignity. He was so relieved when it was all over. He told me he felt like he could finally breathe again, like he had been holding his breath for months waiting for it to be done. My dad started to really flourish after the divorce was final. He was spending more time with Maria, going on trips, picking up hobbies he had dropped years ago. He seemed younger and happier. He told me once that he regretted not leaving my mum sooner, that he had stayed for so many years thinking it was the right thing to do for the family, but really it had just enabled her behaviour and made everyone miserable. He said if he could go back, he would have set firmer boundaries much earlier. But he was grateful that at least now, in his 60s, he had a chance to live the life he actually wanted, instead of the life he thought he was supposed to have. My brother Jason and his wife Kelly were doing really well too. Their kids were thriving, their marriage was strong, and they had found a good rhythm with the new family dynamic. Jason told me that cutting off my mum and Rebecca had actually improved his mental health significantly. He realized that he had been carrying around so much stress and guilt about family obligations, about trying to keep everyone happy, about mediating conflicts that weren't his to solve. Once he gave himself permission to step back and prioritize his own family's well-being, he felt so much lighter. Kelly confessed to me during one of our coffee dates that she had never actually liked my mum very much. She said my mum had always been somewhat cold to her, had made comments about her parenting choices, had compared her unfavorably to other daughters-in-law. Kelly had stayed polite and cordial for Jason's sake, but she had privately been relieved when we all went no contact. She felt guilty admitting it, but I told her I understood completely. My mum had a way of making people feel inadequate, of criticizing under the guise of being helpful, of creating tension wherever she went. We were all better off without that negativity in our lives. As we approached Lily's first birthday, we started planning a party. We wanted to do something special but not overwhelming, just close family and a few friends. We decorated our backyard with balloons and streamers, ordered a cute cake with Lily's name on it, set up some toddler-friendly activities. The day of the party was perfect. Lily was in a great mood, all the kids had fun playing together, and the adults got to relax and enjoy each other's company. My dad gave a little speech about how grateful he was for this family we had built, how proud he was of Marcus and me, how much he loved his grandchildren. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Marcus and I exchanged a look during my dad's speech, both of us thinking the same thing. This was what family was supposed to feel like: supportive, loving, celebrating each other's joys without jealousy or manipulation or hidden agendas. We had lost some relationships, painful, important relationships, but we had gained something too. We had gained clarity about what we would and wouldn't tolerate. We had gained confidence in our ability to set boundaries. We had gained a deeper appreciation for the people who truly showed up for us. And most importantly, we had gained the knowledge that we were capable of protecting our family and creating the life we wanted, even when it was hard. That doesn't mean there weren't still sad moments. Sometimes I would see a cute baby outfit and think about how my mum would have loved to see Lily in it. Sometimes holidays would roll around and I would remember past celebrations with the whole family together. Sometimes I would hear a song or smell a particular perfume and get hit with a wave of nostalgia for the mum I thought I had, the mum who I believed loved me unconditionally. Grief is weird like that. You can grieve someone who's still alive. You can grieve a relationship that was never quite what you thought it was. You can grieve the family you wish you had while simultaneously being grateful for the family you've built. My therapist, who I had been seeing regularly since the intervention, told me that it was okay to miss my mum and still maintain the boundary of no contact. She said those two feelings didn't contradict each other, that I could acknowledge the good parts of our relationship while also recognizing that the bad parts were harmful enough to warrant cutting ties. She reminded me that I had given my mum many chances over many years to respect my choices and my boundaries, and that the intervention was just the final straw in a long pattern of behavior. I hadn't made a rash decision. I had made a thoughtful, necessary decision to protect myself, my husband, and my child. We heard through my dad that my mum was struggling financially. Apparently, she had never been good with money, had always relied on my dad to manage their finances and prevent her from overspending. Now that she was on her own with a fixed amount from the settlement, she was having trouble making ends meet. She had to downsize from the big house to a smaller apartment. She was complaining to anyone who would listen about how my dad had left her destitute, which wasn't true at all. She had plenty of money to live comfortably if she budgeted properly. She just couldn't afford the lifestyle she had become accustomed to. Rebecca was in a similar situation. Without my dad's financial help, she and Brad had to pull their son out of private school and enroll him in public school. They had to cut back on expensive activities and extracurricular programs. Rebecca was apparently very bitter about this and blamed it all on me and Marcus, saying that we had turned her father against her and destroyed her son's future. The lack of self-awareness was astounding. She still couldn't see that her own actions, her own choices to participate in that intervention and refuse therapy and feed lies to her child were what led to these consequences. Marcus's parents came to visit for Lily's first birthday and stayed for a week. It was so lovely to have them there, to see how much they adored their granddaughter, to watch Lily interact with them and clearly recognize them as special people in her life. Marcus's mum pulled me aside one day and told me how proud she was of how Marcus and I had handled everything. She said she knew it couldn't have been easy to cut off my mum and sister, that she could see how much it hurt me, but that she admired my strength in putting my family's well-being first. She also said that if we ever needed anything at all, she and Marcus's dad were there for us no matter what. We had a conversation with Marcus's parents about Lily potentially having sleepovers at their place in Boston. They were so excited about the idea, but also very respectful of our hesitation. They understood that after everything with my family, we were cautious about letting Lily out of our sight. But they assured us that they would follow all our rules and routines, that they would video call us as much as we wanted, that they would never do anything to undermine our parenting. Eventually, we agreed to try it, and the first time Lily stayed overnight with them without us there, I barely slept. But they sent us about 100 photos and videos, and Lily had a great time, and it got easier from there. My dad decided to officially move into the guest house on our property around this time. We had been tossing the idea around for a while, and it made sense for everyone. He could have his own space and independence, but he was close enough to help with Lily whenever we needed it. We could have family dinners together without anyone having to drive home late. The kids could run back and forth between the houses freely. It felt right. Marcus and I had worried a little bit about privacy and boundaries, but my dad was so respectful. He always texted before coming over, never dropped by unexpectedly, gave us space to be a couple and a family unit, even though he was right there. Having my dad so close meant that Lily got to spend tons of time with her grandfather, and it was beautiful to watch their bond develop. He would take her for walks in the stroller, read her books, play with her toys, just be fully present with her in a way he admitted he hadn't been with his own kids when they were babies. Back then, he had been working long hours, and my mum had done most of the hands-on parenting. He said getting this chance to be so involved with Lily felt like a gift, like a second chance to do it right. The holidays that first year without my mum and Rebecca were bittersweet. On Thanksgiving, we hosted everyone at our house, my dad, Jason and his family, a few close friends. We cooked together, watched football, played board games, just had a relaxed day of gratitude. I found myself getting emotional while saying grace before dinner, thanking everyone for their support and love, acknowledging that our family looked different than I had once imagined, but was no less valuable. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table, and I could see my dad wiping his eyes across from me. Christmas was similarly low-key and lovely. We didn't try to replicate the big family gatherings we used to have. Instead, we started new traditions. We went to a tree farm and let Jason's kids help pick out our tree. We had a cookie decorating day where all the kids made a huge mess and we didn't care. On Christmas morning, we did presents at our house and then went to Jason's for brunch. And then Marcus's parents joined us via video call in the afternoon. It wasn't the Christmas of my childhood, but it was ours, and it felt good. New Year's Eve, Marcus and I actually got a babysitter, my dad and Maria, and went out to dinner, just the two of us. We talked about everything that had happened over the past year, the incredible highs of becoming parents, the painful lows of losing family members, the unexpected joys of building something new. We talked about our hopes for the coming year, that we might get pregnant again or start the adoption process, that we would continue healing and building our life together. We toasted to resilience, to chosen family, to the courage it takes to walk away from toxicity even when it's hard. And we kissed at midnight, grateful to have each other through all of it. As Lily got older and became more mobile and more interactive, the joy of parenting multiplied. She was curious about everything, always getting into things, always exploring. She had Marcus's sense of humor and my stubbornness, which was both delightful and challenging. Jason's kids were obsessed with her and would ask constantly when they could come play with their baby cousin. We had regular play dates where all the kids would run around our backyard while the adults caught up on life. These simple moments of normalcy, of family just being family, meant everything to us. We did have one scare when Lily was about 14 months old. We were at the grocery store and a woman approached me while I was putting produce in my cart. She asked me if my baby was Tyler's, said she had seen a photo of us on his social media profile. I was stunned. I asked her what she was talking about, and she showed me on her phone. Sure enough, Tyler had posted a photo of me and Lily, a photo that had only ever been sent to a private family group chat. The photo was accompanied by a caption about how much he loved his girls and couldn't wait to be a family. I was shaking. I immediately called Marcus, and he left work and met me at the store. We took screenshots of everything, filed a police report, and sent all the information to our lawyer. The most disturbing part was trying to figure out who had given Tyler that photo. It had been sent to a small group that included my dad, Jason, and a few other people we thought we could trust. Someone in that group was still feeding information to my family. We needed to figure out who. Marcus came up with a plan. We created a fake photo, actually just a picture of Lily playing in our backyard, and we sent it to different people with slightly different elements in the background. We told one person that we were thinking about getting a swing set and had one photoshopped into the background. We told another person we were considering adding a garden and had that edited in. We told a third person we might expand our deck and included that. Then we waited to see which version, if any, ended up on Tyler's social media or got back to my mom. Sure enough, about 2 weeks later, my mum made a comment to one of her friends about how we were apparently getting a garden and how she wished she could be there to see it. That friend, who was loyal to us, immediately told my dad. We traced it back and realized that the leak was actually my dad's two sisters, my aunts. They had been sympathetic to my mum throughout the divorce, had maintained a relationship with her, and had apparently been passing along information and photos that my dad had innocently shared with them. My dad was devastated. These were his sisters, people he had trusted his whole life, and they had betrayed him. My dad confronted them, and at first they tried to deny it. But when he showed them the evidence, showed them the different versions of the photo and how the garden one had made it to my mum, they broke down and admitted it. They said they felt sorry for my mum, that they didn't think it was fair she couldn't see her grandchild, that they were just trying to help her feel included. My dad told them that by helping my mum circumvent our boundaries, they had put me and my family at risk. They had enabled stalking and harassment. They had violated our trust in a fundamental way. He told them he needed space and wouldn't be in contact with them for a long time, possibly ever. It was another painful loss for my dad. He had already lost his wife and one daughter, and now he was losing his sisters too. But he stood firm in his decision because he understood the stakes. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or family drama. This was about safety and boundaries and protecting his granddaughter. I was so grateful to have him in my corner, to know that he would choose us even when it was hard, even when it meant losing people he cared about. That's what real love looks like, not the manipulative, conditional love my mom and Rebecca had offered, but genuine, unconditional love that respects boundaries and prioritizes well-being. After we figured out who the leak was, we had to have some hard conversations with the remaining family members. We explained what had happened, showed them the evidence, and told them that going forward we would be even more careful about what information we shared and with whom. Most people were understanding and horrified that my aunts had done that. A few people got defensive, said we were being paranoid, suggested we were overreacting. Those people got put on an information diet. They could still be part of our lives, but they wouldn't get the intimate details or the photos or the updates. It was sad but necessary. Marcus and I talked a lot during this time about how to explain everything to Lily when she got older. How do you tell your child that she has a grandmother who tried to break up her parents' marriage? How do you explain that there's an aunt and an ex-boyfriend claiming to be her father who have never been part of her life? How do you help her understand that sometimes the safest and healthiest choice is to walk away from family members who are toxic? These weren't conversations we needed to have yet, not while she was still so young, but we knew they were coming eventually and we wanted to be prepared. My therapist suggested that we write down everything that happened, create a detailed timeline with documentation, so that when Lily was old enough to ask questions, we would have a clear factual record to share with her. She said kids are resilient and can handle difficult truths as long as they're presented in an age-appropriate way with lots of love and support. She also reminded us that by the time Lily was old enough to understand, she would have years of memories of being loved and protected by us and the family members who mattered. She would know who showed up for her and who didn't. Around the time Lily turned 18 months, we found out I was pregnant again. We were thrilled and terrified in equal measure. Thrilled because we wanted Lily to have a sibling and we were ready to expand our family. Terrified because pregnancy and early parenthood had been so stressful the first time around with all the family drama, and we weren't sure if we were prepared to do it again. But we had a stronger support system now. We had clearer boundaries. We had a better understanding of what we needed to protect our family. And most importantly, the people who had caused the most stress were no longer part of our lives. This time around, we didn't tell anyone I was pregnant until I was almost 4 months along. We wanted to have time to process it ourselves, to get past the highest risk period for miscarriage, to just enjoy the news privately for a while. When we did finally share the news, the reactions were purely positive. My dad cried happy tears. Jason and Kelly were excited about another cousin for their kids. Marcus's parents started making plans to visit again. There was no drama, no unsolicited advice about who I should be with, no attempts to interfere with our family planning. It was exactly what it should have been, just people who loved us being happy for us. We decided not to find out the baby's gender this time, wanting it to be a surprise. We prepared Lily as much as you can prepare an 18-month-old for a sibling. We read her books about being a big sister, let her help set up the nursery, talked to her about the baby in my belly. She would kiss my stomach and say, "Baby," and it was the sweetest thing. Jason's kids were great at helping Lily understand too. They would talk to her about how fun it is to have siblings, how she would get to teach the baby things, how she would be an important big sister. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. I was less anxious this time around, maybe because I knew what to expect, or maybe because we had dealt with so much stress in other areas that normal pregnancy worries seemed manageable. Marcus was even more attentive than he had been the first time, if that was possible. He would rub my feet, bring me whatever weird food I was craving, go to every doctor's appointment. My dad would come over with dinner several times a week so I wouldn't have to cook. Jason and Kelly would take Lily for playdates to give me a break. I felt so supported and so lucky. There were moments when I would think about my mum, wonder if she knew I was pregnant again. Imagine what it would be like if things were different. I grieved the grandmother she could have been, the grandmother she should have been. But I didn't reach out. I didn't waver in my decision. Because even though I missed what could have been, I knew that what actually was when she was in my life was harmful and unacceptable. I had to keep choosing my peace, my family's safety, over the fantasy of a relationship that had never really existed. The baby was born on a rainy morning in early spring. Labour went faster this time, and before we knew it, we had a healthy baby boy. We named him Daniel, and he had a full head of dark hair and looked exactly like Marcus. Lily got to meet her brother in the hospital, and she was so gentle and curious with him. She kept touching his tiny hands and saying, "Baby brother," and Marcus and I both got emotional watching her. This was our family. This was what we had fought for. These kids would grow up knowing they were loved and protected and valued, not as pawns in someone else's drama, but as individuals with their own worth. My dad was the first visitor after Jason brought Lily to meet Daniel. He held his new grandson with tears streaming down his face, thanking us for letting him be part of this, for giving him the chance to be the grandparent he wanted to be. He said that losing his relationship with my mom and Rebecca had been one of the most painful experiences of his life, but that being able to have these moments with his grandchildren made everything worth it. He told Daniel that he would always be there for him, that he would protect him and love him, and show up for him no matter what. It was a promise he had already proven he could keep. As we settled into life as a family of 4, things felt balanced and right. We had our routines, our rituals, our chosen family who showed up and loved us well. Were there still hard days? Of course. Were there still moments of sadness and grief for what we had lost? Absolutely. But there were so many more moments of joy and peace and genuine connection, and that made all the difficult choices worth it. We heard less and less about my mum and Rebecca as time went on. They had seemingly given up on trying to contact us directly and had retreated into their own world of victimhood and denial. Tyler had apparently moved to another state and was working in a completely different field, his reputation in his original industry too damaged to recover. My aunts who had betrayed our trust were no longer welcome at family gatherings, and while my dad was civil if he ran into them, there was no real relationship anymore. But our family, our chosen family, was thriving. Jason's kids were getting older and more independent, and they loved being the big cousins to Lily and Daniel. My dad had proposed to Maria, and they were planning a small wedding for the following year. Marcus had gotten a promotion at work that gave him more flexibility to work from home. I had started freelancing so I could be home with the kids more. We had game nights and movie nights and barbecues in the backyard. We celebrated birthdays and holidays and random Tuesday afternoons when nothing special was happening except that we were all together. This is the life I chose, and while it looks different than I once imagined, while it came at a cost I never wanted to pay, it's ours. It's real, and it's messy, and it's beautiful. And most importantly, it's safe. My kids will grow up knowing what healthy boundaries look like. They'll understand that love doesn't mean tolerating abuse. They'll see that sometimes the hardest decisions are the most important ones. They'll know that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect and trust and showing up and choosing each other every day. And that's the legacy I want to leave them. Not a legacy of manipulation and control, but one of authentic love and unwavering protection and the courage to build the life you truly want.